Hi, I'm Larry, and if you're a baseball fan, you'll be glad you joined us. This is a Fargo story, but it's nothing like the Coen brothers' classic movie. This story is about baseball. And we started the path to this video by trying to get to this, a baseball autographed by Jerry Mehlisch. Now in this picture, he's the fellow signing the baseball, and he's doing it for the guy on the right, my friend and Vietnam veteran, Les Jensen. By the way, I appreciate Les coming up with some inside baseball questions for Jerry that you'll hear answered in the interview. Jerry Mehlisch was a catcher on the 1953 Fargo-Moorhead Twins, at that time the Class C affiliate of the Cleveland Indians. The big hitter on that team, who went on to break the Major League home run record, was a Fargo kid by the name of Roger Maris. He hit 61 home runs in 1961, a record that some say still stands. Now, Jerry has some interesting memories of playing with Roger and with other fellows around the Northern League circuit, some of whom went on to become Major League players. To begin, Les asked Jerry if Roger Maris's swing back in 1953 was as good as it became in 1961 when, as an outfielder for the New York Yankees, he broke the Major League home run record.
I would say yes, because he had a very compact swing, and Roger was a very competent individual. When he played with Fargo-Moorhead Twins in '53, he was only 18 years old, but he handled himself well. He was kind of a quiet person. And I have one little story to tell about Roger. We were at Duluth, and after a ball game, and there was about 5 of us walking down the street, and there was a little purse laying in the street or in the sidewalk, and Roger reached down and picked it up, and there was about $10 in there, and there was no name or anything. And we said, "Hey, Raj, you're going to buy us a beer. Let's go." So we started walking down the street, and there was a homeless man standing on the corner. And Roger went over and gave the money to the homeless man. And of course, we all said, "Oh, Raj, now you're going to have to dig in your pocket. You're going to have us to buy us a beer anyway." But that's just the kind of guy he was. He was like I say, he was quiet, but he was a nice, very nice person.
Did you know Frank Gravino, and what was he like?
Frank, yes, I knew Frank. Frank was a very nice guy. He of course hit 56 home runs, and I think that included the playoffs. And Frank was one of those guys that would help the other ball players because he had been up to AAA, and I think one of the reasons he was down to lower classification was due to the fact that he had trouble with his eyes, because he did get beamed in the head when he was up in AAA, so he lost his eyesight a little bit.
Did you ever hit against Chet Dickey of the Grand Forks Chiefs?
Yes, I know I hit against him with the Grand Forks Chiefs, but I also hit against him in semi-pro ball. And I don't remember which team he was playing with, but I know I did play against him.
What month did you come to Fargo in 1953?
I would say in June I came to Fargo. I started out at Peoria, Illinois, and they signed a catcher for about $20,000. And I can remember the manager came to me and he said, "Jerry, we're going to have to play." He said, "I've got the word, being he signed for $20,000. I've got to play him more than I'm going to be able to play you." But he says, "Would you like to go someplace else?" And I said, "Well, if I can play more, yes." He said, "Well, we're going to send you to the Fargo-Moorhead Twins." So that's how I arrived.
Who was the best Northern League pitcher in 1953, in your opinion, either with the Twins or with the other Northern League teams?
Well, we had two pitchers, Don Nance and Ray Seif, and I think both of them won 20 games that year. And they were very, very tough pitchers. They had, both of them had good control, good fastball, and a good curve. I can remember the day I signed the contract with Cleveland. I can remember when I first went to spring training and how nice it was and exciting it was to be there. For example, we had Birdie Tebbetts was there. Red Ruffing, who was a pitcher, was at spring training. And they instructed us. And this was exciting to go down there and be with all these players from all over the country. And I helped sign Herb Score. And Herb Score played at Lauderdale, Florida. And my scout, Cy Slaptica, in 1953, had Herb Score come down to spring training just to look at him, and he had me to catch him. I could remember him getting out on the mound and warming up, and he would say, "Okay, a little bit harder, then a little bit harder," and he's throwing pretty hard right then. And so he would finally say, "Oh, okay, I'll open up," and he could really throw that ball. He had a good curve ball. My scout got me off spring training one day, and we went up to Fort Lauderdale to see him pitch. And after the game, I talked to him, and they signed him in '52, and then he reported to spring training '53 with about 50 of us fellas that were so-called prospects. And then, of course, Herb Score went on to pitch in the majors. We tried to keep a book on all batters on the teams that we played. Before the ball game, whoever was going to pitch, we'd sit down and go through what statistics we had on the pitcher. During a game, then what we try to do is apply what we had on the books on this hitter, whether he's a curveball or a fastball hitter. And of course, you try to set up a pitcher, to throw the ball inside, and then maybe you throw a curveball outside. If we hadn't faced the batter before, what we'd do is, as a catcher, you would try to see how he stood in the batter's box, and try to figure out, what pitch that is going to be the right pitch. During my 4 years of pro ball, we had you get to know the pitchers pretty well. And I can remember this one year in 1954, we had a pitcher, and he could throw the ball hard, and he had a great curveball, but he was not too sharp on thinking out there on the mound. And I can remember many times I would get down on my crouch and give the signal, and I look up and the ball was coming right at me. He didn't wait for me to give the signal, and I would try to, and I'd have to stop the ball game. Would go out, and I'd tell him, I said, his name was Will, and I said, "Will, you gotta wait until I give the signal and give my mitt-ups to throw at." And I said, and he'd say, okay, I'll do that, get back out there, and I'll set down, and here comes the ball. And so sometimes you had to kind of babysit the pitcher.
Did you ever get slugged or you got hit at all? Or?
Oh, yes. It was just one of those nights that was kind of cool, and I was taking the warm-up tosses from the pitcher, and Lettieri turned around to the umpire and said, "Get this kid going out here." And I just calmly said, "It's a cold night, and a little extra warm-up." And he looked at me and he said, "Oh, well, you're a smart guy, huh?" And I said, "No, I'm just telling the facts." So and that kind of started the rhubarb between him and I. And I can remember about a couple of innings later, I get on first base, and the ball gets away from the catcher, and I run down to second base, and he's standing on second base waving his arms. And I said, "Lettieri, what's your problem?" And he just looked at me and he said, "You don't like it, huh?" And I said, "Well, I'll tell you one thing, you don't scare me." So anyway, as I'm leading him off at second base, Lettieri is just cussing me up one side and down the other. So after the inning is over, Lettieri running in front of me and called me unnamed, And as he turned around and looked at me, I kind of give him the high sign. And so I went into the dugout, put my equipment on, I came out. I just finished up taking the warm-up tosses, and Lettieri hollers at me from the dugout, and he said, "Hey, Mehlisch, take that mask off and I'll charge you." And I just looked over the dugout, and I just took my mask off. I threw it on the ground, and everybody, their whole team, comes charging out of the dugout, and Lettieri comes running at me, and I step aside, and I just grab him, and I throw him aside. And the next thing I know, we're all in front of our dugout, both teams, pushing and shoving. And our two managers, Phil Sagi and Charlie, for us, for Fargo-Moorhead Twins, and Charlie Fox for St. Cloud, was arguing. And I was standing right beside him. And Charlie Fox said something to Phil Sagi, and Phil Sagi said something back. And Charlie pulled back his arm. Well, I grabbed his arm. And about that time, they had a kid named Reed hit me on the blind side. I never even saw it. And I went flying, hit me right in the jaw. And the next thing I remember, they had a big first baseman that came over. And as I was laying on the ground, I looked at Reed, the fellow that hit me. Man, he was wild. He had no cap on, his shirt was out, and he was coming after me. And this big first baseman of theirs saved my life, I think, because he run and picked him right up and put him up against the stands and told him, he said, "Don't you move, you stand right there." So what ended up is that finally the fight got all over with. I got kicked out of the ball game, and so did Lettieri, and I got fined a whole $10.
On the 1954 Fargo-Moorhead Twins, one of the pitchers Jerry caught was a guy named Jim Mudcat Grant. Mudcat went on to build impressive records with the Cleveland Indians and the Minnesota Twins. In 1965, Grant had the best year of his career, being the first black pitcher in the American League to win 20 games in a season. This helped the Minnesota Twins get to the World Series against the Los Angeles Dodgers. Mudcat pitched 2 complete game victories in that 1965 series and hit a 3-run homer in Game 6. He was then named Sporting News American League Pitcher of the Year.
I can remember he was just 18 years old and right out of high school, and he's from Lacucci, Florida. And Mudcat was quite a guy. I can remember every night that he would come to the ballpark, he would ask our manager, Phil Sagi, he said, "Phil, where am I playing tonight?" And Phil say, "Mudcat, you're a pitcher. So you won't be playing anywhere." But he did play once in a while in the outfield or first base. He was quite a competitor, and I can remember that he had a pretty good fastball, pretty good curveball, and good control. And he was a happy-go-lucky guy. He always happy in the locker room, and just one of those guys you love to play with. Of course, he went on to, I think, have about 16 years in the major leagues. He comes back for the Roger Maris tournament. Anyway, he has for several Roger Maris golf tournaments. And I can remember the first year he came back here is that at the banquet he got up and talked. And he asked me to stand up and said a lot of nice things about me that wasn't necessarily true, but they were pretty nice, because he said that he could remember that I taught him a lot of things on how to pitch, and it made me feel real good. In fact, right now that we probably talk to each other every month at least to see how each other's getting along and so forth. And he's so busy going to different things and giving speeches and going to spring training and signing autographs. And I think he's a member of the baseball retirement board and so forth. So what a great guy.
What did you think about the revival of Northern League type baseball in Fargo with the Red Hawks?
Oh, I think it's fantastic. I'd love to go to a game once in a while, and I think the manager out here does a tremendous job. I think the whole organization is top-notch. just meeting all the different players at Daytona Beach and knowing that you're part of a large organization and you have the opportunity to do something that many people dream of but never get that big opportunity.
Thank you, Jerry. It was great fun reminiscing with you about the Fargo-Moorhead Twins, who, by the way, were the Northern League champs back in 1953, 54, and again in 1958. Minor league baseball ended in Fargo after the 1960 season, but began again with the birth of the FM Redhawks in 1996. Keep that Fargo baseball legacy alive by getting out to Newman Outdoor Field as often as you can and rooting for the home team, the FM Redhawks, the successor club to the Fargo-Moorhead Twins.
For it's a root for the home team. They don't win, it's a shame. For it's 1, 2, 3 strikes, you're out at the old ball.